99% of scale models will never be shown at any contest. And I go so far as to say the vast majority of modelers will never set foot at a model show. And there's lots of reasons why that is, but I'll tell you what, they are actually missing out. In this video, I'm going to take you to my local show. I'll show you a fantastic venue and some fantastic models. Stick around until the end, and I'll give you some tips on what the judges are looking for should you ever decide to enter a model contest. For me, the fall is the start of model building season. Around here, things get colder, activities move inside, and well, it just seems like the right time to settle down for a few months of model building. Going hand in hand with fall building are fall scale model shows. Now, any model show is the best place to meet and catch up with like-minded people, snag a few deals, and get filled with inspiration. And for whatever reason, I just prefer going to fall model shows over the ones in the spring. And if I can take in some history, well, so much the better. This scale model show, known as CapCon, takes place at the Canadian War Museum. Now, if you have not been to this venue yet, well, it's definitely an immersive experience and well worth the visit. If armor and military vehicles are your thing, you're definitely in for a treat, but more about the museum in a minute. CapCon is a one-day show held every 2 years. As you'd expect, there are vendor rooms with pro and amateur sellers of kits and supplies, as well as club displays and the odd booth for very small and some would even call micro-C model celebrities. Other shows might feature a raffle. CapCon has a silent auction and a ton of donated prizes. And then there's the scale model contest. Now, due to a national health-related emergency, it has been some 4 years since the last CapCon, and I was very excited to catch up with the regular suspects, show some of my builds, and see some inspirational work on the tables. And I was not disappointed. There were some excellent builds on display. Here are a few that caught my eye. First off, we have a couple of Scale Scriber John's models. These beauties ended up winning multiple awards. What I really liked about the Canadian Hornet was just how the weathering was just so subtle and the surface staining seemed so natural. It was just the right amount. It was like it complemented the build rather than overpowering it. Next up, we have this flanker with the digital painted camo. I love the colors, but I really love the patterns, and I appreciated all the work and masking that would have gone into this beauty. I hope he had some help with commercial masks, but either way, it's awesome. Next up is this amazing paint job done by Harvey Lowe on this Italian transport. I'm not sure whether this plane is a vacuum form or not, but he must have sacrificed a goat in order to get his airbrush dialed in to make that tight freehand camo. Heading over to the armor tables, which is usually a scary place for me, I was very impressed with this Great War British tank. I love the rivets, I love the weathering, it just really brings out the detail. I also have this thing for that, I don't know, it's a stained glass camo pattern on Great War pieces. This is a great example. It definitely makes a statement. I think we should bring this style back. And there's something about this Israeli tank with all its retrofitted and bolted on armor and equipment. It just makes it look mean. I also thought it was just the right amount of weathering applied as well. Honestly, there were a lot of great models on the tables. I couldn't get enough of looking at all of them. Now that I'm looking at these pictures, it seems as though I was really focused on the paint on the models at this show, which makes sense as I have been, up until very recently, very much Salin's paint booth for a few months. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to meet and get to know some of these builders. That day I caught up with at least a dozen of them. Not only are they talented builders, but they also love to exchange ideas and a laugh. Some of them even show me some sneak peeks of the stuff they're working on. Now, for those of you who've never been to a model contest, well, let's get into it as I walk you through the museum. So, what is the point of all this? And why should you go to a model show? Now, the safe and boring answer is that the show means different things to different people. Well, yeah, of course that's true. For some, the show is about running in and getting the most pre-fondled model kits at the lowest possible price. And yeah, there's always plenty of that. At times I've seen grown men giggling with glee running back to their car holding multiple garbage bags filled with kits. For others, it is all about the contest. It's the rush of getting that entry done on time, a chance to show the work, a chance to see how it stacks up against the work of others. And hey, there's nothing wrong with a little healthy validation. Getting some well-deserved recognition, a pat on the back from your colleagues, it's a good feeling. But for me, it's all about the inspiration. Sure, there are thousands of websites and Facebook groups and videos, but they just don't compare with getting up close to the real thing. And I've never looked at a master level build and felt intimidated. Actually, it's always been the opposite for me. Even when I went to my very first model show and saw some really crazy stuff, my attitude was always, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it too. Okay, so this is a true story. At the very first model contest I participated in, all I cared about was not making a fool of myself. I got to the contest room, I went over to the right table, I gently placed my big Tamiya Zero beside two other prop models, and I took a step back and had a moment of relief because overall, mine kind of fit in. Anyway, I was headed towards the vendor room and I noticed this tall, skinny guy placing his 32nd scale F18 on the table, and wow, I can still see it. And I'm telling you, everything on it was perfect. The paint, the weathering, it was all amazing. And the panel lines, they weren't heavy, they were subtle, and they were perfect. And I just had to ask, hey there, I was admiring your model. It is awesome. One question, how did you get your panel lines so nice? And you know what he did? Oh man, it was like I kicked his cat. Without a word, he just looked away from me, placed the transport box under the table, and made a beeline to the exit. Didn't even look at me. Bit of an odd duck, that one. But that's only happened once, and of course it had to be my first contest. The vast majority of modelers are actually well-adjusted, normal people. They just have an obsession with making miniatures, and almost all of them will be happy to share their techniques and offer a tip or two to anyone who asks. I've been at this thing for well over 10 years, and I consider myself to be fairly competent. I mean, I'm still interested in figuring out how things are done, trying new techniques, experimenting with my builds, and that's why I keep going to the model show. So, if you're thinking of going to the show, any model show, I say go for it. There's nothing to lose, and you might actually walk away with some inspiration, a tip or two, and a cheap kit. What's better than that? And maybe you're thinking of taking it one step further and entering a model into a competition, or maybe you're hesitating. And I get that. I did too. What initially held me back from competition was a thought that some of these self-appointed experts were going to point out flaws and ridicule my efforts. And yeah, hard pass on that one. When I first got back into model building, I already knew my stuff wasn't up to somebody else's snuff, and nor did it have to be, because I got back into this hobby to relax and have fun. And the idea of competition seemed to be completely counter to that. But it doesn't have to be. I'll say this. Entering competitions made me a much better modeler, because what the judges are looking for are things that make the models nicer to look at. So what are these things? Well, first of all, it's about getting model construction down. No seams where the pieces join, no glue or thumb splotches on the canopy, aligning the wheels, leveling the gear, leveling the wings, aligning the landing gear and the munitions, and finally making sure that all the elevators and everything, the flying surfaces, are level to the ground. And if you had to do some nipping and tucking on the model, then just be sure that all the sanding marks are gone, your panel lines are fixed, and your surfaces are smooth. That's the construction. And then it's about the finish, and this one's a bit less prescriptive and a bit more subjective. Judges are looking for smooth, even paint, properly applied decals, and a consistent finish, whether or not the model has any weathering. And in my opinion, the construction bits are fairly straightforward. They'll take you a little extra time and a little patience while you're building. The finishing bits like paint, markings, and weathering, well, that's nothing more than giving techniques a try and then getting practice to get them down. And that is about it, unless some of you on here think that there are some building tips that I'm missing when it comes to entering contests. And if there are, I'd love to hear from you down below. If you want to get better at this thing of ours, contest building will increase your skills, and you will produce better models regardless of how you place or how many awards you win. And you'll probably meet and have a good time with other builders. Just don't mind the occasional odd duck. Thanks for watching, everyone.